Hello, welcome back to the podcast. Today's episode is one I think so many of you are going to see yourselves in. I'm talking with Stephanie Gray, who runs a fractional legal services business, helping growing companies move out of the DIY phase and actually get the right legal foundations in place to support their growth. But what we really get into in this conversation isn't just legal strategy, it's the path she took to build her business in the first place. We talk about leaving a traditional career, navigating that in between phase of testing things slowly, and what it actually looks like to build something while raising young kids and rethinking your relationship with work. There's a lot in here about redefining success, letting go of timelines, and building a business that supports your life, not the other way around. And Stephanie also shares some really practical insights on where small businesses often overlook legal gaps, especially when things are working until they're not. It's a really honest, grounded conversation that blends the tactical with the personal in a way I know will resonate. So let's get into it. Welcome to Scale with Clarity, the podcast for entrepreneurs who are building a business and a life that actually feels good. I'm Brooke Cunninger, fractional CFO, strategist, and mom of three. And I've learned that scaling isn't just about hitting revenue milestones. It's about finding alignment between your big vision and your everyday reality. Each week, you'll hear honest conversations with founders who are redefining success on their own terms. We'll talk about the pivots, the aha moments, and the tough decisions behind the scenes. Plus, the surprising ways entrepreneurship becomes the greatest personal growth journey of all. Whether you're dreaming of leaving corporate, navigating the messy middle, or trying to grow without burning out, this show is here to help you scale with more clarity, confidence, and ease. Because building a business should expand you, not deplete you. Let's scale with clarity together. Stephanie, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for coming on. I'm so excited to talk to you and to have someone local that I can bring on too.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Me too. Before we started recording, as I usually do, we chatted for a while and we're talking about how the weather is finally turning here. So I'm like, I feel like my mood in general is like, I'm so excited to talk to you and the world is changing. Work is great. It's like amazing. So it's a good day. It's a good day to chat with you too.
Very good day.
So will you start by just introducing yourself and talk about your business and what you do right now?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Stephanie Gray, and I provide in-house fractional legal services. So what that means is for the businesses who are done DIYing, you've done all the Google searches, all the templates, but you're not right quite where you want to be legally, and you can't afford an in-house legal team. I come in the middle. So I help analyze and audit your business and figure out what legal strategies you would need to help grow and scale.
I love that. And when we first talked, I was like, there's such a growing, I'm obviously so passionate about this, being a fractional as well in the finance space. But one, I feel like there's such a need with small businesses that need, just like you said, you're done doing it yourself. And you're like, but I'm not at the point where I'm going to bring in a full-time in-house legal counsel or in my case, a full-time finance, like a CFO. But you, to put on that CEO hat, you're like, I'm not doing it myself anymore. I'm going to pay an expert for a certain amount of time. So I think there's such a need with businesses. But on the flip side, and I want to get into this a little bit with you, I think it's such an opportunity for moms or people in general looking for flexibility where the workforce is going. But I know you yourself have two young children, and I ended up leaving when my daughter was, God, I guess she was 18 months at the time, but had three kids at home. And I think it's such an amazing opportunity to lean in and like be able to provide value with your skill sets, but do it in a flexible way. So maybe can we so before your work right now, you used to working for a firm, right? Is that like your history of that?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. So I was working in private practice. And you kind of get to the point where you like at first you don't know anything, you're getting the training, you're getting the years under your belt.
Yeah.
And then you start getting these clients and they're very high value cases. And then they're coming to you directly with questions. So you gain the confidence, like, I can do this myself. I don't need a boss. I don't need direction. And for me, in my experience, what happened is that was being coupled with my brother-in-law. He has a bunch of his own businesses, and he was in the situation where I just described, where he couldn't afford an in-house lawyer. So he would come to me with questions about like contracts and structuring business deals. And so that kind of made me see where, okay, like there is a need. I do know what I'm talking about. So why don't I just do it all myself? I don't need to use the firm.
Love the way you structure that too, because it's kind of like this, like, picturing like a rant or something, but like as your confidence grows, so of course, right out of school or right out of getting whatever certification you need, like you're not sure. And I still think actually people well into their career who kind of are more generalists are like, well, what specialty do I have? And you have so much. So but you're growing your confidence, you're growing your like learning. At the same time, I feel like there's a big group of people like that who might be like, "Well, I have this expertise, but who would want it?" And to your point, I don't know, wanna say lucky for you, but I think and that's the hope actually with this podcast or the more we talk about it is like, there's such a need out there of like smaller businesses, even micro businesses that are like, in my case, it's like 1 to 5 employees that are making good money and profitable, but they're like, where do I even start? And so for you to kind of see that with your brother-in-law, that's awesome because you're like, I can do this. What was the next step though? So you saw this like, okay, there's a need. Were you, what did it look like for you? Were you like, okay, I want to go do this? Or was there fear about leaving and maybe kind of going out on your own? How did that work for you?
Yeah, I mean, being a lawyer, my whole brain is trained to be risk averse, right? So I am trained to look at something and think of all the ways it could go wrong. So there is a lot of conversations with my husband, a lot of internal conversations of, can I do this? A lot of imposter syndrome, which I know everyone deals with.
Yes.
And then for me, what I decided to do is take the baby steps. It was like, okay, I'm going to do this with my brother in law. Okay, now I see another business that I know through my internal community that needs help and just keep working that slowly. And that's where I've just gained the confidence. It was going slowly and not trying to rush and create it to this giant business all at once.
I love that because a lot of the questions I get from people who are thinking about going or have just started is like, how long is it going to take me to replace my salary? And I feel like that puts so much pressure on. And for me, like I've said this before, but I'll say it again. It's as long as it's going to take for you to honestly figure out what you like. Like it's less about like there's this specific path and framework you need to follow to grow a business. And it's like, who do you want to serve? And what's the type of services? Like there's all this stuff that if you've been in a traditional W-2 job, you just haven't had to figure out about yourself. And so some people are immediate. They're like, I got it. It's no problem. And others, it takes a while. And so I love what you say too. It's kind of like these baby steps of just testing it. Did you do that while you were still in a role or did you leave and you were like, okay, now I'm just going to like have the space and the capacity to try and test this out?
No, I still did it while I was in the role, just because it's like, for me, like jumping, we were in my personal life, I had gotten married and we had bought a house and I was pregnant with my first child. So
Talk about a couple changes that they were like, do one at a time.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, the thought of being like, "Okay, we're just gonna get rid of this paycheck now," like, that just was not, like, financially feasible, so it was a lot of, doing it in your spare time, in the evenings, just working it into your schedule and trying to manage that quote, unquote, "balance," to the extent you can, but it's just reminding yourself, like, "Okay," at least for me, what motivates me is,
Yeah.
what do I want my life to look like when I'm 55? And then what can I do now, a little bit each day, to help bring it closer to that goal?
So good. I actually, this is kind of off topic, but I think I've mentioned this before. I actually have the book here. I just took this certification, this facilitator training. Tara Moore. Have you? It's called Playing Big. I don't know if you've everyone needs to read this book. Read this book. But one of the things is about kind of envisioning your future self. And some people I think are like, oh, that's really woo. Like, what would your future self tell you? But to your point, it kind of gives you that North Star. And it doesn't mean, what's the saying? Like, you underestimate what you can accomplish. Well, you overestimate what you can accomplish in a year, but underestimate what you can accomplish in 10 years. And so, like, you think about, right? It's like, that North Star, if you just start doing it now, like there is no telling what in 2 years' time what you'll be. So you might as well start like kind of doing that. So I love that idea of like what you wanted to be at 55. What was it telling you? You don't have to get into the details, but was it like more flexibility or like what was that
Yeah, it's a couple
you
things.
envisioned?
So at 55, I would love it if I was some kind of like retirement. So what that means to me is that I'm still having my own business. I'm not in the weeds of where I am every day right now. I'm managing a few people who are doing most of in the weeds, what I would call now, like working
Yeah.
with clients, doing that day-to-day operations. And then if I am working the 10 hours a week, like that's what I envision, like something where I can keep my mind going, but I'm not
Yeah.
stuck to the grind of wake up, emails, responding, meetings every day.
I feel like that's like the constant, people, you always say like, and I work with it, my first thing when I start working with a new client is like, it's not just about growth and increase your profitability. It's like, what do you want personally? Like, why are you in business? You know, like building the business around the life that you want. And that's so hard actually, because people are just like, it's almost easier to externalize it and look at the external factors of happiness, proclaimed happiness, which is like, I'll just build a business and I'll just get more revenue. So I love what you said too. It's about like, not only what do I want then, but it's like, I think my version of that is very similar. It's also like, I don't think there's ever retirement for me. I want to build a business that I love doing that's not like I want to get away from. Like I just enjoy my clients, but I recognize through that and through actions, what are the things that drain my cup and what are the things that energize it. So exactly like you were saying, like certain things in building that business that you've been like, okay, that's the stuff that I would love to eventually offload. And some people are like, it's bookkeeping. Some people, you know, it's like contract, whatever it may be, you start offloading, which, oh, by the way, shout out to fractionals. That's why you bring them
Yeah,
in.
that's what we're here for.
Side note. But, and then what are the stuff that energizes me? Like some people get so drained by content and marketing and others are like, oh my God, I can finally lean into creativity. And you don't know it until you just start doing it too. But to your point, it's like, that's how you want the business to evolve. So at 55 or 60 or 45, or maybe even like 30, right? You have a business then that is doing things that you love and you've been able to kind of offload the things that you don't like.
Right. I'm glad you said that because as I've been growing this one, I think that's a lot of self exploration you do is
Yeah.
what, like, you know, what you can provide, right? Like, I can provide legal services. But then growing that as a business, you experience all these other skills you have to develop. Like you said, marketing. Marketing is not something that comes naturally to me. So learning that is like a whole other animal. And so like that would be one thing I'd love to just offload and
Yeah.
have someone else
Yeah.
deal with. And
Yeah.
I think growing a business, you really you learn that about yourself. And it's a lot of like life lessons there.
And I think when I was in, not I think, I know when I was in my traditional job, I mean, it's pretty standard that, well, I think it's evolved, but it used to be once a year or quarterly, you'd get a review and feedback on what you needed to improve on and what you needed to lean into. And it really kind of was external. Like I actually wasn't asked very often. It was almost a predetermined path, you know, like in this culture, in this business, this is what you need to get better at to get to the next level. And so when you leave, it really is kind of on you to say, what do I like and what do I want to get better at? And the getting better for me often felt like I was taking a step back because to your point, you do something for the first time and it's uncomfortable. You're really bad at it. You don't even know where to start. Like sometimes for me, it was even like writing an email. I like talking. I'm communicative, but when it came to like outreach or whatever, I was like, I don't even know how to say hi, basically. And so it feels like I'm like losing my skill set, but I had to keep reminding myself, no, I'm like leaning into it. I'm growing in this way. And then who knows, in a year, maybe I'm like, yep, I've learned how to do that and now I'm ready to offload it. Or, hey, like this is actually fun because it's like something and you just don't know. And I realized I hadn't even developed that skill set of like self-assessment, like you said. What do I enjoy? Let me just like, there's no failure, right? Like all that stuff that you kind of have to put the hat on. And that is what I minimized when I went into entrepreneurship. Like I thought I was going to have to like learn finance better, you know, like, or just like, but it was like, throw all that out. It was like, to your point, the like internal personal development of like
Yeah.
learning how to do that. And then the rest kind of just follows actually.
Yeah, it's a lot of trial and error where it's like, okay, like at first I was like, do I need to learn more like business law? And it was no. It was more of learning one, what do I like to do? And then two, what do the potential clients actually want? Because
Yes.
I can tell them what I think they need, but that's not actually maybe what they want to focus on.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
how do you get to their level? That's also like a learning.
Yeah.
At least in my industry, I find that people love it when you talk to them one on one. That's where the trust comes in, and not so much of the lawyer on the billboard. That's not really what works in business law. So it's a lot of trial and error there.
I thank you for saying that too, because I think a lot of I keep saying this. I will speak for myself,
Mhm.
but I think this is probably a common thing is overcomplicating because you've come from, especially if you're going from a huge multi whatever business to a smaller business, like a micro business that a lot of fractionals I know work in. So they don't need the full-time employee. They just need you part-time. And a lot of times you bring that highly complex, overly done presentations and speak and like in my mind, projections and financials when what a small business needs is very different and and I think and almost to the point where it's like a turnoff. And like, so to your point, it's not learning more complexities and depth. It's what is the client you're targeting actually struggling with day to day, and what do they
Right.
really need? And oftentimes it was like getting out of my own head. It's less about like knowing more financials and it's more about like almost their like emotional, like all the stuff that comes with small business. You're juggling multiple hats and you're having to do multiple things and like hiring your first employees and trying to offload your own work. It's like that type of
Yeah.
stuff. So anyways, I love what you said too. It really is this evolution of trying to figure out what they really need, obviously. And the other thing you said earlier, and I want to kind of come back to that, is finding your first clients. I love what you did. And I don't know if this is purposeful or you said like you had your brother in law, but I've always said, and everyone I talk to, this is the case. And actually, almost to my own detriment, I do as I say, not as I do, everyone, because your first clients are going to be your network. They're the ones that you already know. And I know so many people, and myself included, that, like you update your website and you post on LinkedIn and you try on Instagram and you're doing all this content and trying to get all this marketing right. If you were to just email, I remember my husband, he'd be like, just email, email 10 of people in our network. I'm sure they have 4 people that would want, like,
Yeah.
and I'm like, like that is because actually that's way more like it's somebody who knows me and I'm asking them something and it's uncomfortable versus actually just speaking to the masses, but you're not really speaking to anyone. And so I love how you found your first clients. It's such proof that that's what happens. It's like you got to start kind of in your inner circle and go from there.
Yeah, and I like to think of them as like your test clients almost, right? It's like a safe space. You already probably have a personal relationship with them.
Yes.
You don't have to worry about being performative at all with them. So you can really, I feel like, analyze them a bit more, like analyze their business, figure out how you're going to really help them and have those deeper conversations. And you learn a lot through them because they trust you a lot more than maybe a stranger or a client you don't really personally know would.
Yeah. I love that. I love that too. And as you're trying to kind of test to your point, like
Right.
the market and what do they really need, it's a really good place because you've already the know, like, and trust factor. You're already there. And so really you're just trying to refine what is the most helpful service that I could provide and what does that look like?
Right, and then I
And
find they end up being, like, your biggest, like, hype person, I guess you could say, because 'cause they're like, "We
yeah.
love this person and we love what they do, we know them personally."
Yeah.
They can kind of, like, snowball and do the word of mouth, so then that's just kind of how it can grow organically without having to do all the social media posts, and, like, that in of itself is very draining.
I love that.
Yeah.
And the other thing I want to kind of dive in with you too is you have 2, as I mentioned, 2 small children
Mhm.
right now and actually just came back from, I guess, what you'd call a maternity
Yeah.
leave. But if you're an entrepreneur, like, is that really ever a thing? And I know a lot of people that are listeners that's kind of the reason they went into being a solopreneur, thinking about leaving their traditional job is for the flexibility, whether your mom or your dad or even caretaking their parents at this point. How has that looked for you? Was it what you thought? Is it better, worse? Like, what are some of the pros and cons of trying to have the flexibility, but kind of run your own business while you're raising children?
Yeah, I'm sure all the parents that are listening can relate where you have an idea or of what you think the day's gonna be, and then it gets totally derailed by a toddler's emotional needs, by just a kid randomly wakes up and they're sick. So for me, I am type A. So I love making to-do lists, love planning it all out. And then what I've had to learn in doing my own business plus raising kids is that this to-do list is never going to get all done in one day, maybe not even during that week. So letting that go has been an emotional journey for me. Where
Yeah.
if you can just focus on, like I said, doing a little bit each day to get to whatever you visualize your life going to be at 55, you just got to keep moving. And it's going to be hard. I'm not going to lie, it is very hard some days, but there is no, I guess, balance. I guess it's just trying to move your life forward to where you want it to be each day.
Yeah, I think like you said, it's like grounding in your why as to why you left, whether it's flexibility or you want to be around your kids more or you just wanted to own your own time, whatever it may be. Everyone has their own why. And keeping your eye on that long game. And I speak from personal experience too. We were talking a little bit before we pushed record. I'm like, I left, I have 3 now, not as young kids, but still in school and home. And my my version of success and what I think is accomplishment is constantly being tested and changed. Like I still have that old mentality of, okay, the grind, but just constant movement towards the business and always thinking about it. And I minimize the value in my ability to be present and flexible. And we talked a little bit about here in Maryland, the winter was the longest. Deep. The kids had 10 snow days,
Yeah.
and that would have thrown me off. Like, I would have not been able to shut down work. There would have been meetings back to back. I would have been
Yeah.
yelling at them all day. They would have been home, whatever it would have been, like, and I didn't have to. Yes, I had this sense of I wasn't getting stuff accomplished and I wasn't doing what I thought I needed to do, but that was self-imposed, totally self-imposed. So I think the difference for me has been, as opposed to having managers or somebody kind of breathing down your, like, telling you what you need to do, it's managing your own expectations of what does success look like? What is move forward movement in this season of life? And just keeping, like you said, your eye kind of on that long game of, I'm still making progress towards that every day, even if it's like one minor thing, I'm doing that. But also, by the way, progress towards that end goal is having children that are
Yeah.
happy and have a relationship with me and are healthy. And I'm like, check. Okay, you know what? I'm totally nailing that. Even if I don't know whatever number I put on my business, I thought it should be at this point.
Yeah. And that was really important to me and a huge motivator because being in private practice for at least for me, I have to do what's called billable hours. So I actually have to track every 6 minutes that I'm working. And so for me, it just
Which is great. That how much time that takes up to even know what you're doing every 6 minutes is
yeah,
like on top
yeah.
of it, right? Yeah.
So that was the other whole mind shift of being like, I don't have to track how
Yeah.
long I'm writing an
Yeah.
email for it. That's a whole other thing. But when starting your own business, there is that nice part where I feel like I can focus on my children, like you said. Like I can put the phone down, put on do not disturb. I'm there for for what me feels small, like I'm there for like their spring music concert. But for them, they're like, I'm so excited. I've been practicing this for weeks. They look for you in the audience.
Yeah.
That like those are the moments where I'm like, I'm so glad that I had the flexibility that I can like be here and be present. And like you said with the snow days, it's, like, great where you're like, "Okay, these 3 hours, I know I'm gonna have to focus on them, playing with them, whatever it is, getting them breakfast." And then, like, during nap time, you go and you, like,
Yeah.
focus on what you need to do for the business. And
I
that's, at least for me, is what I found to be really important in leaving.
Yeah. I thank you for saying that too. And I just had this conversation earlier this week with another woman who had just left. She's like actually used to be an ER doc. So talk about like
Wow.
crazy hours or whatever. And she started her own practice. And we were talking about the same subject essentially and like her relationship with her kids now. And it was almost like we didn't know what we didn't know. Like everyone makes do. And that's not to say you have to leave, but like my lack of boundaries in my traditional job and my people pleasing tendencies, how they came out was I didn't, I was there for my kids. I was checking the box, but I wasn't able to really shut down that side and be present. And how I see that now as my kids are getting older is they want to hang out with me. And I know about like random things like they're changing their seating chart in like as a freshman in high school in like one of his classes, and it's stuff that's like so little, I mean, truly, but it's a sign that I'm like, I wouldn't have even known. I wouldn't have even known to
Yeah,
ask, you know what I mean? And so I'm like, my relationship and my ability to be present and listen and be the person that they can come to with stuff that is pretty small, but it's indicative of the larger relationship that I'm building. And I'm like, I've got to keep coming back to that and be like, how important is
yeah,
that versus like, I don't know, the short term number of like discovery calls you've had or something. You know what I mean? So it's like, anyways, I think that has been the biggest thing for me as a mom and an entrepreneur and trying to grow a business and everything is just
yeah.
really constantly resetting. What does that look like for me? And like remembering the non financial factors that are important as well.
Yeah, and for me, like, coming from private practice, it was all like, I'd be at my desk typing, and then I would hear my son and be like, one more minute,"
Yeah.
and it never
Yeah.
or, like, 1 more hour, and it never is
Yeah.
just 1 more hour. There's always something else, and then,
Yeah.
like, to the people-pleasing tendency, you're like, "I just wanna perform so that I can get, like, a good job email,"
Yeah.
and then just, like, keep going. But then there's, like, a point where it kinda hits you, at least in my industry, it's called, like, golden
Yeah.
handcuffs, where you get paid a lot, and you're like, "This is great, I can afford a lot for my family." But then you're like, "How much am I seeing my family?"
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you're almost using that money to pay other people to take care of your life for you. And
That
then
is exactly how it got for me. We had
yeah,
two nannies. I'm like, why am I to
yeah,
have them take them to their like sporting events? And I'm like, I think I wanted that to be me. Like, I can't,
yeah. And
yeah.
it's like and then you
Which,
leave, you're like and, like, to your point of, like, the revenue goal, like, that almost shouldn't be it because it's like I'm making less now, but, like, the mental happiness is 10
yeah,
times more.
that's
Like, being with
everyone I've
my
talked to.
family, putting my phone away, like, all of that is a way better life.
Yeah, getting really, really clear on what you really need. And listen, everyone listening, there is absolutely a financial need to like, absolutely. But more often than not, at least the people that I talk to, this kind of general, oh, I just need to replace my salary without kind of saying, what do I actually need? And what is it going to? And exactly to that point, I was paying. And then, we were doing what as a as a good financial steward we should be doing. Like I preach is like putting money into savings. And I'm like, what if we put like a little less into savings because I was making less, but I was
Mhm.
present and I was enjoying my life and my nervous system was regulated? Like that's a cost too.
Yeah,
And not to mention not taking care of my health and going to all the appointments because I would just keep putting that off. So like all that stuff just needs to be factored in when you're thinking about like, oh, like what's my salary now and what do I need it to be there? So yes, thank you. Like I just feel like the more you hear personal stories of it, it's like it's not a black and white and it's hard. Like you just got to get through it, but like don't hold yourself like that's the thing that I've got to get to because
right.
everyone I've talked to, it's like the happiness, there's a cost to that too. Like it is such a value and I would pay to have that happy, like I would pay somebody
Yeah,
to give me the level of like autonomy and happiness and calmness that I now feel
right, like,
versus
the
before.
the change of, like, not waking up in the morning and being like,
Yeah.
like, that ch
That heaviness.
yeah,
I know.
that change in your life is just it's amazing to
I
don't get
know.
it, yeah.
I know. Well, okay. I want to also talk about, I mean, your area of expertise, which is why I wanted to bring you on here as
Mhm.
well, is so working with kind of shifting gears too, as I talk about like growing our business. I could talk about that forever. But what are some of the common things? So, like is it all different types of business? Are you working with mainly startups? So, like, what size are you mainly dealing with in terms of your clients?
Yeah, so the size varies on the industry,
Uh,
but mostly like, these are businesses who have been around 5+ years. So you have your contracts in place, right?
mhm.
You have your relationships with your vendors or with your clients, and
Yeah.
then you have your website. You have a privacy policy. You're pretty solid. But then you're like, okay, I'm noticing like I'm having trouble getting people to pay me on time, or I'm having vendors flake on me, and it's like you have those little issues and
Yeah.
you're like, "Okay, but how can I make this better and just, like, make
Yeah.
my business tighter and not have to deal with these issues on a daily basis?"
So it's almost like it's not when a huge issue comes up, which is certainly obviously need lawyers. Like that's what I think about. I'm like, oh, you bring in an attorney or a lawyer when like I get sued or you want to sue, like if that,
Right.
but it is almost these little cracks that you start seeing that you're like almost like processes that you could tighten up ahead of time or something. And that's what like is one of the areas that someone like you is really helpful with is like, to your point, vendors are paying late or whatever it may be. Is that some of the main things that like you think that businesses
Yeah, so, like, it's
come?
gonna it's gonna vary business by business, right? Like, the best way for me to get in there is to, 1, understand how you're making money, right? Like, if I can understand how you're making money, then I can assess where your risks might be.
Yeah.
So yeah, but a lot of issues that I see is that they put together a contract and a lot of times it's the other party's standard form contract. So there's a
Mhm.
lot of one-sided language in there that you don't even realize. You're just like, yeah, like I like these people. We have like a good couple dinners together. Business relationship is great. And that's how it always goes. It's great until it's not. Like someone doesn't hold up their end of the deal and then you try to go get them to enforce it and you realize you have no legs to stand on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for the business owner, let's paint a picture. So, um, maybe they're just starting out, maybe they have a couple employees,
Mhm.
they have vendors and, like, probably a standard contract. Let's talk about like a service provider that probably has a standard contract that brings somebody in. So whether they're a consultant or maybe like a designer of some sort, like, they have, like,
Yeah.
standard processes. What are some of the things they should think about now maybe that you've seen, like, "Oh, you waited too long?" Like, is it and I'm not gonna I shouldn't be leading, but one of the things that I think I see is this, to your point, tracks that are maybe AI or you just get it, like
Yeah.
online somewhere. But I know that was one of them. But like, what are some of the things that maybe they should think about before it becomes a problem at that stage in business?
Yeah, so one easy quick tip is look at your payment terms, right? Like if you find like someone you're not sure if they're going to pay you, they're a risk, maybe get on prepayment. Like have them pay you before you give the service. That would be
Yeah.
great. Or do a deposit. We see that a lot. Another one is cancellation terms or are you terminating the contract? You sometimes you want to be able to get out of a relationship very quickly and easily.
Yeah.
Some companies are sneaky and they try to make you pay to leave a contract, which is like a huge red flag.
Yeah.
And you want to be able to leave without having to stay in for like another 60 days. You know, sometimes they say you can cancel, but you have to wait 60 days to actually leave. That also
Yeah.
should give you some pause because you're just
Yeah.
wasting 2 months of money right there.
Yeah.
So those are like two areas I would really focus on first.
I love that you're speaking my language because a lot of those come to cash flow, which is like
Yeah.
exactly what small businesses, that's one of the, I mean, the biggest thing besides not paying yourself, which comes down to cash flow too, but is unpredictable cash flow, also resulting in negative cash flow. And so,
Hmm.
to your point, what it's exactly what you're talking to is like some of those things that you can think about ahead of time, which is slow payment terms or clients that are not paying you or et cetera, et cetera. So, looking at that, and I love how you kind of look at the risk around that. So before it's even a problem, but you'd be a great resource to just say, let me review this ahead of
Right.
time. Is there any wiggle room? Like I'm just thinking about me as a like kind of consultant that comes in, like a lot of the software stuff, like stuff that I am purchasing, it's like with these big companies that you just, it's like a standard. Like,
Mm,
is this really, are those pretty locked in? And we're talking about like, okay, if you bring on a client one on one, like your own personal, like how much wiggle room is there or risk, I guess, with some of these, like as you're in that phase looking at contracts that are maybe, I would say more standard, but I don't know if they're more standard or not.
yeah, I mean, there's always wiggle room, right? Like people will always, at least what I've found, that the big companies will always say, like, here's a contract you have to sign or we're not going to do business. That is always like not true, right? That's kind of like
Yeah.
them trying to bully in the little guys. There's always room for negotiation. You have to remember it's a negotiation, like both sides are not going to feel happy with the
Yeah.
outcome, but I wouldn't ever just like take it or leave it. Because at the end of the
Yeah.
day, they have come to you and they do want your business, right? So they do want you as a business partner and you do provide some value. So you should remember that, like stick up for yourself and don't be afraid to do the red line and edit it and go for everything that you want. And then maybe you'll get 90% of that, but it's better than zero.
I love that. Okay, so 2 things I'd say. So, good to have your own standard contract that
For
maybe a
sure. Yeah.
lawyer has reviewed so that you can make sure you're protecting yourself, payment terms, discontinued cancellation terms, all that type of stuff. Secondly, though, is if you are, which some people listening I know are in the world of they're providing fractional work or consulting work for larger companies that they're
Hmm.
trying to get into who probably have their own standard, their own in-house legal counsel and standard contracts. That doesn't mean that it's an end all be all for you. So make sure you're watching out for your own perspective and having someone maybe like you, Stephanie, or if you have
Yeah.
your own like contract to go through just to make sure that you're not getting yourself locked into something that's going to be disadvantageous. Disadvantageous? Is that a word?
Yeah.
For for you in your
Right.
business.
Because like just like think about it, just as you have your standard form contract, another business is going to have theirs. And I've
Yeah.
never been in a situation where a business has said, no, you can't
Yeah.
negotiate this.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
go back and forth.
Mhm.
So, if somebody wants to work with you or just has questions for you, maybe where do they find you, or what's the best way to reach out to you and contact you and
Yeah,
follow along with you?
yeah, so there's 2 places. First, the fastest and easiest way to get a hold of me will just be, like, just directly email me, sgraylegal@gmail,
And that's Grey, right?
Grey.
Yep, sgraylegal.com. Okay.
And then the second way where I provide a bunch of free tips is on Substack. It's called
Oh,
Counseling Capital.
I need to
Um
follow you there. We're not connected there. Okay,
But yeah,
good to know.
follow me.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
there's an article where I do the 5 pillars of what you need for your business. I would start there if you're like, I need to
yeah,
just kind of like do a little personal audit of my stuff. Start at that
yeah.
article and then go from there. Then there's other articles that dive into more specific nuanced issues. But that's like a great place to start to see if you're on track.
I love that.
Mhm.
Okay, so I will put that in the show notes. So your email directly, but then Substack, follow along or look at that article, and we'll include the links to all that in the show notes.
Yeah.
Um, Thank you. I just last question for you. What is success for you now that you've left and you're kind of building your own business? What does it look like for you in the day to day?
Success for me looks like, for personally, it's like being able to spend that morning with my children
Yeah,
and that evening with my children. It's the best. And then the weekends, like truly, unless there's an emergency, stepping away. Um, Career wise, I love the one on one connections and just talking with my clients
yeah,
and figuring out their
yeah.
issues. And then that personal win of when you give them like how to negotiate a contract and they're like, they accepted all of it. And you're just like, or,
And they're
like,
so
yeah. And you're like, okay, this is going to go really well for them.
And you can, like, directly see the impact that, like, you're having and the positive like, the
Yeah.
feedback that you get. Yeah, I
Like
love that too. So,
yeah.
like, I love the one-on-one client work. I know some people move into other areas or digital products, but, like, that's why I love that, really getting to know
Yeah,
your
that,
clients.
like, talking to them and, like,
Yeah,
really easing all of their, like, worries and self-doubts and all that is the best.
I love that. What a good answer. A lot of those, I'm like, "Yep, yep, yep." Being there in the morning, being able to, like, slow morning it, get my kids off to school, and then jump into the day, like, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your story, both personally and then also just tips that obviously are gonna help all the businesses. I always end this with, like, I'm a true believer of the more you hear stories from others, the more you think it's possible to know, like, "Okay, here's one way that I can go about, building this business in a way that's aligned with me." So, I always appreciate hearing the personal side
Yeah,
as well.
it's great. What you're doing is really great. The community you're
Oh,
building
thank
is, like,
you.
amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So I get so lucky. I get to meet people like you all the time, and so I'm like,
Yeah.
speaking of building a business that you love, I'm like, I get to have these conversations. It's so good.
Yeah.
So thank you for coming on.
You're
We'll put
welcome.
everything, like I said, in the show notes, and you guys reach out to Stephanie if you have any
Yeah, I'd
questions.
be happy to help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey there. If this episode sparked something for you, I'd really love to know. Shoot me an email or leave me a comment on the episode. Those messages really do mean more to me than you realize. And if you're craving more clarity in your business or your career, you can explore ways to work together at www.scalewithclarity.com. You guys, thanks so much for taking the time to listen to the episode. I always love recording these and sharing them with you, and looking forward to seeing you on the next episode of Scale with Clarity.